of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be ever mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Amen. Would you please be seated? This morning at our Bible study, the last 2 weeks we've had some pretty dismal Bible studies. Dismal not because I'm such a rotten teacher, but last week we talked about abortion, and the week before that we talked about this clergy sexual abuse crisis. So this week I thought we'd be a little fun, so we talked about old movies. We had Betty Davis and Humphrey Bogart give us lessons on Christian doctrine from the movies Now, Voyager, and Casablanca. And actually I was thinking about that, and I actually feel like Betty Davis in the movie All About Eve, because I want to tell you, hold on to your seats, folks, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. We're going to go places this morning. We are going to talk about Jesus Christ. We're going to talk about the gospel. And I want you to hold on, because this is going to be a great morning. But you got to open your ears and open your heart and push out all the stuff you may think that you know. But read the Bible with open eyes. I want to talk to you about our gospel this morning, and it's traditionally called the Sermon on the Plain, the Beatitudes. Now, what's a beatitude? Well, it's Latin for blessed. Blessed are, blessed are, blessed are. There are two beatitudes in the New Testament. There's one in the Gospel of Luke, which has 4 blessings and 4 woes. And then there's one in the Gospel of Matthew, which has 8 blessings. And some wiseacres, usually you get this in confirmation class, but some 16-year-old boys will always come up with, well, Father, the Bible must not be true, because how come Matthew's got 8 and Luke's not 4? What happened to him? Did he throw some out the window? And they contradict each other, because the blessings here are a little different from the blessings there. Well, I shocked this 16-year-old boy by telling him that ministers, preachers sometimes recycle sermons. I never do that, do I? I never go over the same thing again and again. Jesus, in his 3-year ministry, spoke again and again and again, and we only have snippets, glimpses of what he said. We don't have every sermon from every day. And in this case, we have 2 different sermons and 2 different places with 2 different audiences. The Sermon on the Mount, Matthew, and the Sermon on the Plain cover the same topics, but they have different audiences. The message is the same, but the words are very different. And where I want to go with this after we go through this Bible reading this morning is to tell you is that there is no one right way to be a Christian. Apart from my way, of course, but apart from that, there is no perfect church, no perfect priest, no perfect denomination. Each of us seek God in our own way, led by the Spirit through Jesus Christ. And if somebody tells you it's my way or the highway, take the highway, folks, because that's not the Holy Spirit speaking. Now, our gospel reading this morning is from Luke chapter 6, and it begins, Jesus came down with 12 apostles and stood on a level place. That's why they call it the Sermon on the Plain. He was on some flat ground. And there was a great crowd of disciples, and then he lists where the people are from. Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Judea, Jerusalem, the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Pretty words, don't mean anything to us, do they? Well, let's compare it to what we read in Matthew. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across Jordan followed him, and he went up on a mountainside and sat down. This is the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is on the mount, Jesus is in the plain. And you notice they're different crowds. Judea, Jerusalem, Tyre and Sidon versus Decapolis, Galilee, the regions across the Jordan, plus Jerusalem and Judea. Well, what does that mean? Well, time for a little economic geography classes. Judea, Jerusalem, who's been to Israel? I've been to Israel. Galen, Brenda, Sally, Sue, our visitors this morning. I'll embarrass you by asking your names later. But if all you know from Israel is the movie Ben-Hur, or Biblical Epics. You may think that it's all dirt, it's all rocks, and everything seems to be uphill. Well, yes, a lot of Israel is hill country. But there are also fertile valleys and plains, Galilee, and other regions that are wealthy. The place where Jesus has the parables at the farms and the vineyards and agriculture are places that are productive cropland. But many other places of Israel are the hill country, where people scrape a living on poor soil with little flocks and little flat places where they can grow things. And Tyre and Sidon are modern-day Lebanon. They're coastal metropolitan trading cities. These aren't Jewish towns. And there are people from Tyre and Sidon on business coming to the south. The Tyre and Sidon, if you will, of Hong Kong, or the New York, or the Rotterdam, the great harbors, the great industrial depots. From Tyre you would get the purple that they would make purple robes from. From Sidon you had the mint where the temple coins were made. What are we here? And what is Jerusalem? The capital, and Judea, the heartland, the suburbs. So one group of people are wealthy foreign businessmen and the city slickers, the urbanites, the sophisticates. This is a unique, distinctive audience. As if it would be Jesus appeared at the Junior League of Westchester County in New Rochelle. He's talking to people who work in the city, who are bankers, who are lawyers, who are wealthy people, powerful people. And then we have people from Galilee, the hillbilly farmers. We've got people from Jerusalem. We've got some of the wealthy urbanites. We have people from across the Jordan, which is like being from Okeechobee, just so far out there, you never see them. So we've got, if you will, a local, rich, sophisticated business audience in the Sermon on the Plain, and then the Sermon on the Mount. We have an audience that is a cross-section of all society. The city slickers and the hillbillies, the rich and the poor. Two different audiences, two different places. Same general sermon, each begins with blessed. And in his sermon to the rich, Jesus says the first beatitude. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Who in this audience of wealthy people is poor? Jesus is speaking to. He then goes on to say, but woe unto you who are rich, for you have received your reward. Jesus is talking to a wealthy group of people, and he is using the word you. Now what does he do on the Sermon on the Mount? Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He changes it from you to the third person. Blessed are the poor, the generalized poor, not the dirt poor people from Luke's gospel, but the poor in spirit in Matthew's gospel. Now, if I were a commie pinko liberal, like some people in this congregation, I'd focus on poor and not talk about poor in spirit. And a lot of ministers do that. They bang that drum, which should be banged. But it's a deeper drum because Jesus is speaking to different groups of people. When he talks to the rich, he talks about their duties to the poor. Because you have your reward in this life. And you've got to do something for those who don't. But when he talks to a group that includes the poor, he doesn't say to them, hey guys, you don't have to worry. Because you're dirt poor, you are got a guaranteed kingdom to heaven. Forget about the fact that you may be envious of the wealthy, that you may hate the rich, that you want to take their things. That doesn't matter. He doesn't say that. The topic changes to those who are poor in spirit, meaning they don't believe. What is Jesus doing here? He goes in the same direction. And that same answer is, don't rely upon your own strength, your own power, your own might to save yourself. You think that you've got it all. You're young, you're white, your American Express card works, the world is yours. But he says that's not enough. That world is never going to be enough because you have got your reward now. But if you can are counting on that, on saving you, you got another thing coming. But when he talks to the poor people, as well as the rich, he talks about the fact that unless you believe, unless you're rich in spirit, you are not going to be saved. What Jesus is saying in each of these cases, it's the same general message. Wealth does not come from what you've got outside, but who you are inside. Talking to a wealthy audience, he says to them, unless you do what you need to do to help your neighbor, unless you do what God calls upon you to do, to be there for the poor, for the needy, for the suffering, you cannot know the kingdom of heaven. But to those who are poor, he does not say, all you've got to do is hang on. He says, you've got to have faith too. And you can't rely upon your victim status for being enough. You've got to believe. Now, what does this say about our life as Christians? It says that one size does not fit all. George's way of doing things, I may think it's the best way. I may think it's the right way. But I have a different life experience. I have a different background. I have gone through things differently than Ron or Alan. We each hope to come to that same point, which is union with Christ. But I cannot say you've got to go my route, and they cannot tell me you've got to go their route. Each of us are called by Christ to be true to who they are. And who they are is not an attribute. Strong, rich, white, American. What it is a believer or not. It's faith that counts. For those who have money, they have a particular burden. Not because they're rich, but because the temptation when you're wealthy is to think that you can fix things with your money. I have gone through an awful time with my daughter's illness. And it's been so awful because there have been points in my life of going, damn it, I'm paying a lot of money for her to get better. Why isn't it happening? Have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a place where you're putting out your hard-earned dough and you think you deserve something in return, even though it's not possible to buy health with money? To buy happiness with money? Oh, if I only get this job, if I only get this new house, if I only get this, then my wife will really love me. Have you ever known anybody like that? And what is the answer? It doesn't matter how much you have. It matters what you have here inside, who you are. Rich or poor, black or white. Those are important in our world, but they mean nothing to Jesus Christ. What is important to Christ is who we are. Now, what does that tell us how we should live? It tells us that we should respect the dignity and the person of everybody. How does that work out in practice? It means not turning up your nose at somebody who may think differently. Our political world is so poisoned right now. It hasn't been this bad since, I guess, the 60s, people tell me. I don't remember the 60s. But it hasn't been this bad. And people assume well, if they think that, they must either be evil, stupid, or crazy. We've reached that point where it's so black, so white, there is no love or charity for somebody who's different. And I'm not really interested in the truth of these issues. I'm interested in the truth of Jesus Christ. And what I am called to do, and what you are called to do, even if you are the most vociferous partisan of a certain group, of a certain person, of a certain belief, it is still to love your neighbor. It is still to reach out to them in kindness. Now, that doesn't mean you roll over and do whatever they want. That doesn't mean that you don't have a mind of your own. What it does mean is that you use that mind, you use the instrument, the tongue, to spread joy and love and fellowship and not hatred. Jesus spoke differently to different groups of people because they were in different places in their lives, but he was giving them the same message, which is don't rely upon the externals,
Who do you rely on? What gets you through the day? What do you trust in? You trust in your pension? You trust in the fact that you're an American, or that you're wealthy, or that you're this or you're that? Or you trust in being a victim? That doesn't matter. Oh, it may matter on little things. But what matters truly and forever is Jesus Christ. Put him center of everything. Make him the center of your heart. Make him that greatest, precious, most wonderful treasure that you have. Put Christ ahead of all and treat the world as Christ has taught us to treat it, with love, with fellowship, with kindness. That doesn't mean roll over and give in to the next bully. It means treat that bully with love and respect, even if he doesn't deserve it. Even if he is evil, stupid, and crazy. Treat him as you wish to be treated yourself. This is how Jesus is operating. Meeting people where they are. Different places in our faith life. We just baptized little Tyson. He's just turned 4. He's in a very different place than, Ron, how old are you? 96? 97? We're in very different places. Are we going to say that because Tyson is innocent and unspoiled at 4 years old, don't laugh, Ashley, he is the perfect Christian? Or Ron, because of his wisdom and maturity and longevity, he is the perfect Christian? No. That we're called to be the best Christian as we are in who we are. Don't look for evil in others. Look for good. Live a life that puts Christ first in everything. And how that works in with other people